Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. This time, he was pissed. Though, somewhere in the back of his mind, he had always known it was coming. His facade of always being happy, cheerful, and the one he had acquired during the academy, which was being a dumb, was once again fading. It was closing in on the time where he would drop the facade anyway, though he wanted to be strong enough to back those words up. But now, he wasn't so sure he was ever going to get the chance to show his true self. So, you've entered us into the Chunin exams, 2 days before the exam? Naruto inquired, a building cloud of ki surrounding him. The ki was directed at none other than their so-called sensei, as the cycloptic ninja scratched the back of his head sheepishly, akin to the loud blonde in front of him. Well, I had hoped to inform you tomorrow, but I'm going to be busy, he said with his unusual eye smile. That's no better, Sasuke growled, almost as pissed as Naruto. Their pink-haired comrade only stared in disbelief at their sensei, mind trying to wrap around the thought of Chunin exam. You three shouldn't worry though. I'm sure you're all ready for this. Kakashi-sensei, all you've taught us is tree climbing. Unless walking up a tree is going to save us from a hail of kunai and Chunin rank jutsu, I doubt we're ready. Naruto deadpanned, gaining a raised eyebrow from the Jonin. Honestly, Naruto, I thought you'd be excited about this. Naruto frowned. Oh yeah, I'm the dead last who rushes into everything blindly. Of course I'd be happy to go into a deadly tournament that's sure to get my less than mediocre killed. At the same time as his thoughts, Naruto plastered on his fake smile. Of course I'm excited about it. I'm just worried too is all. We're going to dominate, believe it. The next second, a fist collided with the back of Naruto's head, making him wince in pain. Leave it to Sakura to capitalize on nothing at all. Baka. Don't be so arrogant. The Chunin exams are no joke. Well, seeing as you three have some preparing to do, I'll be on my way. See you at the academy at 7 sharp in 2 days. With a wave, Kakashi vanished into wind. I've got to learn how he does that, Naruto exclaimed. Another fist met his head. Don't be stupid. That jutsu's probably too advanced for a dobi like you. Isn't that right, Sasuke-kun? Just like that, the bubble-gum ninja went from yelling to fawning. Sasuke's reply was to promptly walk away. The ever-so-faithful obsessor, which is not a word by the way, don't go using it, Sakura bonded after him like a puppy on a leash. Naruto's smile fell instantly and he rubbed the knots on his head. The hell does she do that for? As if talking is too hard, she has to hit to get a point across. Walking back towards his apartment, Naruto pushed the thoughts away. He still had a small crush on Sakura, if that. He knew that it was a long shot from being called love, and the only reason he made it seem that way was to keep up appearances. He wouldn't turn down a date anytime soon, but he wasn't going to keep letting her hit him either. Being obsessed was something that he would like to leave to fangirls, and he was far from a masochist as well. Entering his apartment, he looked at the various cups or Insta ramen strewn over the foyer. It was the only dirty place in the apartment, which was just a show to those who were at his front door. En contraire to popular village beliefs, Naruto was not a dead last. He was far from an idiot, albeit he didn't have as much knowledge as others due to the teachers sabotaging his learning at the academy. He had taken it upon himself to learn as much as possible on his own, and because of this, knew things that others his age shouldn't have known. He wasn't weak. He'd be damned if he said he was ready for Chunin though. His skills were lacking greatly, and he had to admit that most of his accomplishments were based on dumb luck. Note, pretty much it's canon Naruto but with the insight to know his strengths and weaknesses. Asterisk. He knew that a certain Hyuga had a crush on him. Come on, when someone stalks, follows you around damn near every day, you're liable to notice them at least once. The only problem was that Naruto didn't want to get too close to her. 1. If he did, the villagers were likely to start treating her the way they treat him. 2. If he got with Sakura, the villagers would treat her the way they treated him. Oh, would he enjoy watching that until he developed actual feelings for the girl. 3. She kind of creeped him out. Past that, he just wanted the girl to be happy. So far, she was content with just watching him train. Walking into his room, he pulled off his horrid jacket and flopped onto his bed. He flared a hand sign, creating 3 clones. Go train or whatever the you do while I'm sleep. Come on boss, you should actually try to train too. You're never going to get stronger this way. One of the clones said. Yeah boss. You want to prove everyone wrong, don't you? Quite procrastinating and get off your lazy. The second one responded. Naruto rolled over on his bed. If it weren't for the fact that you were me, I'd tell you to go yourself. But I don't feel like masturbating right now, and I'm already feeling silly for arguing with myself. He waved the clones off who only looked at him sadly. Because they were him, they knew what he was feeling. Kakashi hadn't really taught them much of anything, just like the academy. Now they were going to be put into the Chunin exams. Naruto knew it was only for Sasuke. Kakashi knew perfectly Naruto and Sakura were nowhere near ready for the Chunin exams, but Sasuke was probably. All their sensei had done was set them up for humiliation, and ultimately failure. A deep chuckle inside of Naruto's mind made him wince. Priceless. You should see the look on your face. The booming voice of the QB laughed at its container. Go choke on it, furball. Naruto spat back, entering his mind. My, pretty feisty today, aren't we? What happened to having a mutual relationship? Naruto dug in his ear. You're the one that keeps bugging me, damn it. We agreed that you wouldn't be evil and I'd listen to your advice here or there. Yes, nowhere does it say I can't annoy the living shit out of you. Also, you haven't been listening to a word I've been saying recently. The fox's red eyes narrowed at the blonde, sending a shiver up his spine. Even knowing that the fox was one of his word, Naruto could never forget that it was also a dangerous machine. If it wasn't for the seal, he wouldn't have anything to do with the creature. But not being able to escape his fate as a Jinchuriki, Naruto opted to make peace with the beast, or as close to peace as he could get. The fox wasn't downright evil, but a hell ride from even being remotely good. When not being evil, it was just being annoying as all hell. The only advice you've been giving me lately is to talk to Hinata so we can mate and pop out, little kits. I don't even like her like that, much. A small blush crossed his face, earning chuckles from the demon. Fool, I've been telling you to train with the Hyuga heiress as well. She could have been helping you get stronger, as well as you helping her overcome her insecurities. She will be in the same position as you in the Chunin exams. Naruto's head shot up. What? She has been watching you train. This means that she has been neglecting her own training. As well, her father cast her aside and has not been teaching her himself. How do you know that? Your mind is not the only one accessible to a mighty demon, Kit. Naruto rose an eyebrow. You could read other people's minds this whole time. You could have been helping me, you stupid fox. No, if I were to reveal what others are thinking to you, things would only get worse. Besides, it's fun to screw with you, was the fox's only reply before bursting into laughter. Seeing as you already know my little secret now, would you like to know more? Naruto stretched before getting comfortable on the sewer floor, indicating that he was willing to listen to more. The fox laid down as well, putting its muzzle on its front paws. Listen closely, because I intend to make you take life seriously. As you are now, you are but a liability to yourself, everyone around you, and especially me. Naruto grunted at that. Of your former classmates, only the Nara child is ready to be a Chunin. His brain more than makes up for his lack of physical strength, though with his clan's stronger moves, that won't matter for long. The Inuzuka, Akamichi, Aburame, and Uchiha are ready physically. However, their mindset will hinder them from achieving that goal. Hinata would be ready physically if she was trained properly, but even so, she is far too focused on you and the problems that she deals with daily. Naruto frowned. Just off of inquiry, it sounded like Hinata was living a shitty life as well. It made him think of the Hyuga heiress even more. Finally, you have the Haruno and Yamanaka. Neither of them should even consider Chunin. Both are completely pathetic physically, in more ways than one. Mentally, they share brains with Sasuke, seeing as their heads are so far up the pompous brats. Even Naruto had to giggle at that one. But the Yamanaka may take less convincing to become serious, seeing as she has spent less time with the Uchiha. Okay, so what does this have to do with me? Naruto asked. Don't you get it, Kit? None of these kids are ready because none of them are taking being a ninja seriously. They are either latched onto their Jonin senseis, or dealing with problems the way children would, which is relying on others. None of you, outside of the Nara, has the mindset of taking your future into your own hands seriously. Do you truly wish to become Hokage? Of course. Naruto shouted. Then take a page from your father's book and get serious. The fox boomed. As silence filled the area, it looked at Naruto. His mouth hung open and his eyes stared straight forward. The Kyuubi rose an eyebrow for a split second before it realized the mistake it had just made. Crap. You knew who my father was? Naruto asked, just above a whisper. The fox sighed and leaned up, stretching as it did. Of course I know who your father is, Kit. He was the one who sealed me inside of you. Just like that, pieces of a puzzle fell into place. When Naruto had learned about the Kyuubi, the third had said it was the fourth that sealed it inside of him. Now looking back on it, he felt stupid for not asking why him of all people. Then even more stupid for not seeing the resemblance between him and his hero. Finally, he felt like a moron for not seeing how obvious all of the clues were. In consolation, he could at least say most of the villagers were just as stupid. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Naruto asked, tears forming in his eyes. It doesn't mean as much coming from me as it would have coming from the Hokage. The fox replied, cold-hearted demon, he may be, but he still believed in honor. The honor of telling Naruto the truth should have been reserved for someone precious to him. Naruto held his head in frustration. The fourth Hokage was his father. Okay, it wasn't much of a shock when you did think about all the obvious clues, but it was still an overwhelming revelation. He felt so many emotions at once. Anger, joy, sadness, relief. It all washed over him like a soothing breeze, only to be yanked away by what the Kyuubi had just said. I'm not taking being a ninja seriously. The fox watched as Naruto began thinking, knowing that it was rare to see Naruto evaluate anything he had said. You're right. This whole time me and my friends have been sitting here, waiting for things to fall into our laps. The little effort we do put forth is nowhere near enough, especially when we live in a world where death is as natural as breathing. The fox nodded, actually shocked that Naruto had figured it out so quickly. Your father would not be proud of this village as it is now. He added, I know, Gigi is doing the best he can, but he's already old. And I know Dad didn't get to be Hokage by sitting around. Naruto frowned, looking at himself. He felt ashamed now. Ashamed of the fact that he had been playing ninja for the most part of his life. Ashamed that he had purposely let himself get as weak as he was. Ashamed that he had accepted it. Well then, Naruto, if you know this, then what are you going to do? Are you going to keep your facade, and wait for that loathsome, pathetic excuse for a sensei to teach you something? No, not at all. I'll be stuck here for the rest of my life if I waited. He paused, standing up with a confident smirk. The fourth Hokage is my father, and knowing that only makes me want to become Hokage even more. Not just to make him proud, but to prove that I am his son. But more than that, Naruto closed his eyes. To prove that I'm better than him. I want to become a ninja that even Dad could only dream of being. I want to be able to destroy Biju if need be. The Kyuubi scoffed at Naruto's implications. Knowing that the fourth as your father has spurred all of this. The demon chuckled slightly. No, and yes. I was going to start getting a bit more serious regardless, but knowing that my father was the greatest shinobi to walk this planet makes me want follow after him, and eventually overtake him. Plus, I want to protect those precious to me, especially Hinata. If what you said is true, then she's had a rough life just like me. I won't be able to make her happy if I'm weak. Naruto frowned again. The weight of what the Kyuubi had revealed to him was weighing completely on his shoulders. It shouldn't have taken him until now to get serious about his training. It definitely shouldn't have taken him that long to see the path they were going down. He needed to start thinking about what was truly important, even if it meant sacrificing happiness now for happiness in the future. From this point on, Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze, is going to be the best damn ninja to walk the face of this earth. No one will forget that name. Without warning, Naruto left his mind, much to the chagrin of the demon fox. He immediately jumped out of his bed and reached for his jacket. Stopping in mid-motion, he frowned at the offending piece of clothing. No, I can't wear that crap anymore. The reality was that Naruto had always worn bright colors so people could see him when he did his pranks. They would remember him, acknowledge him. But that was the past now. He didn't need to pull pranks anymore. Though he wasn't saying he was going to stop completely, he was going to have people acknowledge him for his skills. Instead, he walked over to his dresser and pulled out a pair of black cargo pants. Switching those with his orange jumpsuit pants, he left the dark blue shirt on. But he ripped the sleeves off anyway, feeling that it was a slight variation from the jumpsuit, blue shirt combo he usually wore. Plus, it was cheaper than going to buy brand new clothes anyway. Real ninja didn't have time to worry about exactly what they had to wear. Yo, boss, what's with the new look? The clones filed back into his room, two holding scrolls, the last one balancing kunai on the tips of its fingers. Naruto glared at the useless act for a second before turning to the clone that asked the question. Just dispel and save me the trouble of explaining to myself. The clones did as ordered and Naruto was instantly filled with the knowledge of the scrolls, and how balancing kunai on the tips of his fingers was actually good concentration practice. Who knew? Naruto grabbed several kunai and shuriken before heading out. The sun was setting so he didn't have nearly as much time as he thought. He knew one night of intense training wasn't going to make much of a difference, but if he could be at least 1% stronger by the Chunin exams, then he'd take that 1%. Just before he reached the road, he paused. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and calmed down. I won't be sluggish if I go calmly. He jumped onto a rooftop and began heading towards his team's training field, using large and smooth strides as he crossed the buildings. It didn't take him long to reach field, and he smirked. The entire time he was on alert and even caught one of the villagers throwing something at him while he passed. Normally, he would have missed the little stunt. Okay, so what am I going to do until the morning? How about I show you a little jutsu? The Kyuubi boomed in his mind. Naruto rose an eyebrow. You're being a lot more helpful than normal. What's gotten into you? You are getting serious. That's it and that's all. I want you to be strong enough to give me a challenge by the time I escape and destroy everything. The Kyuubi chuckled as Naruto grimaced. Hey, no evil talk. Now what's the jutsu you're gonna show me? Naruto closed his eyes as the demon sent an image of a shadowy figure standing in a clear field. The man was surrounded by enemies and they all had weapons. The name of this technique is the Tatsumaki Renpatsu. Tornado Barrage, it's a move the fourth, your father created. Naruto remained silent and watched the scene. The person waited until all the enemies were close to him. Suddenly he spun, whipping up a large gale that quickly formed into a small twister. The enemies were ed up and the person seemed to be flashing in and out of the twister, slashing the enemies with a katana. I can't do that, Naruto said bluntly. For one, I didn't even know I had a wind affinity until just now. So I won't be able to use anything wind related until I get at least a week of training in. Even more, Dad was known as the Golden Flash for a reason. I can't move that fast, so I wouldn't be able to attack my opponents while they're in the tornado. The QB smirked at Naruto's conclusion. It also reminded him that he was still young. Kit, you have shadow clones. You can get 1 month of training in a night. As for the speed, use your clones here too. All the blonde could do was sigh. Maybe it was going to take a little more for him to change completely. Seeing that move made him feel lazy. For a moment, he began to have second thoughts about everything. Could he really become as great a ninja as his father? He looked up towards the sky. Thinking about wasn't going to get him anywhere. Now wasn't the time to be having doubts. He needed to get stronger, for everyone's sake. Alright, let's get started. But after I've mastered that move, I want to try to make one myself. Naruto said, creating hundreds of shadow clones. As the moon began to settle into the night sky, a silent wind blew over the Leaf Village. Many who felt it, also felt the tides of change. Not good, nor bad. The serene feeling of the blessed air chilled some and brought melancholy to others. It was the last night Uzumaki Naruto wore his mask. The next day, the sun shined brilliantly down onto the sleeping face of the Uzumaki, seeming to illuminate his oblivious, yet peaceful features. The silent chirp of birds echoed off of the thousands of pieces of steel that littered the training ground. With kunai, shuriken and ninja wire in heaps all over the field, it looked more like a battleground. Silently stalking the outskirts of the field, someone drew a kunai and looked at the helpless blonde. In a blur of speed, the person dashed toward the sleeping teen. In less than a second, the person was pinned to the ground, a kunai aimed at the back of their head. Haha, wake up, call boss. The clone said nervously as Naruto held its arm behind its back. Good work, Naruto said before dispelling the clone. The clones had been trying to get the drop on him ever since training had ended the earlier that morning. He had intentionally left one alive to see what it would do. I wonder if this falls under suicidal tendencies. Naruto looked around at the field, stretching and yawning. He had only gotten about an hour of sleep, but the thought of how much he had progressed just by using shadow clones brought a smile to his face. He wasn't sure if he was ready to take on the Chunin exams just yet, but he was sure that compared to the Naruto he was the day before, he was ready to give it a shot. With the flare of a hand sign, the kunai and shuriken vanished in puffs of smoke. He walked around and collected the real weapons before heading back towards the village. Taking a deep breath of fresh air, Naruto smirked sadly. It felt like the first real breath of air he had ever taken. It saddened him that he could have changed at any time but chose not to. Shaking his head, he decided to no longer dwell on the past. He needed to look towards the future, or he'd never be able to make it better. The sound of a child crying caught his attention and he rose an eyebrow. Hey, leave Konohamaru alone. Sakura's voice was heard several seconds later. Naruto groaned and walked towards the area where the sounds were coming from. This little brat needs to watch where he's going from now on. A teen wearing what appeared to be a full body, black cat pajama suit and makeup held the little boy up by the scruff of his shirt. Moegi and Udon stood behind Sakura helplessly, and Sakura stood there screeching like a banshee. Come on, Kankuro, we don't have time for this. A sandy-haired blonde with a fan on her back said in annoyance. She was looking around nervously as if expecting someone to show up at any moment. Naruto sighed again. He hadn't wanted anyone to see him until the Chunin exams had actually started. Hey, drop the kid before I make you. Naruto said as he walked around the corner with his hands in his pockets. Naruto, Sakura called, actually a bit excited to see her teammate. That excitement turned to curiosity as she noticed his new attire. What did you say, brat? Kankuro said, glaring at Naruto. Come on, boss, teach this pajama-wearing freak a lesson. Konohamaru called, still struggling against the older genin's grip. I said drop the kid. Naruto's voice was right in Kankuro's ear. A shadow clone stood right behind Kankuro, holding a kunai to his neck. We don't want any trouble, especially right before the Chunin exams. Kankuro gulped, eyes wide as he never noticed the clone there, nor had he felt any signs of chakra building when Naruto performed the technique. He was too distracted by Konohamaru to see if he had made any hand signs at all. Kankuro prepared to release Konohamaru, but before he could, a small rock hit his hand. Everyone's gaze, save for Naruto, went up into the nearby tree. Naruto scoffed, whispering, "Show off. You should listen to the Dobi," Sasuke said and jumped from the tree, slowly walking towards the group. "Sasuke-kun," Sakura cried, swooning over the raven-haired Uchiha. Naruto rolled his eyes and prepared to walk away until he felt a malicious presence. His eyes widened and he turned around. "Gaara," Kankuro stammered out, taking a step back from the red head that had just showed up. We were just. Shut up, before you." Gaara spoke monotonously, and Naruto could see the kids tremble visibly. Even Sakura seemed to be shaking. Gaara's gaze passed over everyone's faces, but lingered on Sasuke's. "Mother wants your blood. I look forward to proving my existence against you. Naruto, say this," the Kyuubi told Naruto, getting a questionable gaze. "Gaara, your existence can't be proved buying. You're only making yourself fade further into darkness as that thing gains more power. If you're willing, meet me behind the Chunin exams building an hour before the test. I need to talk to you." Temari and Kankuro looked astonished between the blonde and their brother. Did he know that he had just gotten himself? The weird part was that he wasn't dead already. Sakura and Sasuke also looked on in bewilderment. "Fine. But if what you have to say doesn't interest me, I will you." "Works for me," Naruto said and crossed his arms. He frowned, not knowing what the Kyuubi was playing at. The Sand Trio walked away, Temari and Kankuro giving nervous glances back at the Leaf Nin. "Hey boss, that was cool," Konohamaru exclaimed. Naruto smiled down at him, but quickly frowned as Sakura opened her mouth. "Not as cool as Sasuke-kun." All present, including Sasuke, sighed. Naruto-senpai, what's with that new look?" Moegi asked, head to the side in curiosity. Udon and Konohamaru seemed to want an answer as well. Once again, Sakura made her opinion known. "Yeah, Naruto baka, why does it look like you're on your way to do laundry?" She stifled her own snickers. "To answer your question, Moegi, real ninja don't have time to worry about appearances all the time. As long as what you're wearing makes it easier for you fight, then it doesn't matter what you wear," he answered in a calm tone, taking all present by surprise. "Now, I'd love to stay and get reacquainted with my team, but I've got a little more training to do before the exams tomorrow." Jane. With the wave of his hand, Naruto walked away from the stunned group. Lucky for him, he was good at predicting the stupidity of his teammates. Neither had wondered how he was able to get the drop on Kankuro several hours ago. So of course they wouldn't have thought too much about him actually going to train. He figured Sasuke just didn't care, with that whole superiority complex of his, and Sakura followed him blindly with that whole obsession complex of hers. Also going by things that he was good at predicting, he expected Hinata to be finishing her team training and being on her way to stock. Watch him. He stood up, wiping sweat from doing push-ups. He turned towards the stone pillars where he knew Hinata was hiding. She was most likely watching with her Byakugan. Chuckling, he pretended not to notice her, creating several clones before taking a fighting stance. He was used to it, and under the watchful gaze of the Hyuga heiress, Naruto felt he could train in peace. No one would come to disturb him without Hinata noticing, and when he felt her lower her chakra, he would know something was up. After several minutes of light sparring, Naruto finally stretched and looked directly at the pillar. "Hey, Hinata, you can come out at any time if you want to practice before the exams." A small squeak was his only reply. He chuckled, holding back full-blown laughter, and walked towards the starry-eyed girl. She blushed profusely, amazed that her long-time crush had known she was there. She looked up at him, wondering if it was the real Naruto. For reference, Hinata Hyuga was, and still is, the shyest girl to walk the Hidden Leaf Village. So as the image of her crush, puppy love or not, seemed to descend from the heavens themselves, one could only imagine that the girl was completely, utterly, speechless. As the gears in her head cranked into overdrive to prevent the pre-teen from falling back and most likely smacking her skull onto hardened soil, she let out what Naruto could only describe as a pleasure-filled moan of bliss known only to those who have felt complete in more ways than one, yet contained all the virtue of an angel. As overdramatic as it seemed, it was exactly what happened. Naruto-kun, he's talking to me. The only thought that crossed the princess's mind, of course, was on this trifle event. Naruto, on the other hand, was debating running from the now dream-induced girl. He was currently waving his hand in front of the spaced-out pre-teen's face, hoping that her conscience wasn't on a one-way trip to Obsession Land. Yo, Hinata, wake the hell up, he called, shaking the girl slightly. The girl shook her head before looking directly into Naruto's eyes. And diving right back into the blissful ocean of her mind. Well shit. We aren't gonna make any progress like this. Naruto picked the girl up, carrying her towards a tree. He began to sweat as the girl incoherently mumbled something along the lines of, "Don't stop, Naruto-kun." Setting her down by the tree, he sighed before going to continue his own training. Actually, maybe I should have thought that one through a little more. I hate to admit it, but she may be almost as bad as Sakura in her own little way. Naruto really liked Hinata, more than Sakura no doubt, but he couldn't ignore the fact that she was just plain weird. He was insightful, yes, but still held his adolescent mind. There was a lot the boy knew about love and romance, though it seemed he still didn't completely understand the term, shy, and the concept of being too afraid of rejection to actually confront my crush and or love. Hinata Hyuga fell into both categories. So until the young teen actually began to understand the true depth of the feelings Hinata had for him, he would never truly be able to accept the girl's heart. Nor would he be able to open his heart in the same way. The Hyuga heiress began to stir in her semi-conscious state. Naruto-kun. Naruto paused from his exercise and smiled at the princess. He dispelled the remaining clones and walked over to the girl. Of course, she blushed, and a flurry of questions ran through her mind. Is that really Naruto-kun? He looks so different. Where's the orange? Yo, Hinata, if you keep fainting on me like that, we'll never get any training done. Naruto called, flopping down next to the girl. Her blush grew at the close proximity, and she suddenly found herself holding her breath. It was unbelievable, to actually be having real interaction with the blonde. Though she hadn't spoken one coherent word the entire time, now's better than never. Naruto-kun, and she had nothing. Nothing could come to her to describe exactly what she wanted to say to him. She didn't know herself. In the back of her mind, she wanted to speak up, to engage a conversation or anything, instead of just sitting there like a choking ditz. Her irrational side was telling her to be reckless and admit her feelings on the spot. However, the Hyuga could have a level head, to some degree, and could easily push that thought away. The fact that Naruto was taking his time to talk to her meant that he was interested in her, even if just bordering slight curiosity. She knew she wasn't very articulate to begin with, and her courage was just a shot above none. So tears came to her eyes as she realized that she wouldn't be able to speak to him comfortably at that time. She cursed herself on the inside, feeling weak and helpless. Unable to confront Naruto in a simple conversation, and unable to stand up to her father over her own usefulness. Pathetic. She felt pathetic, in her own right. All the talks of her being useless and being shunned by her own family. She was finally starting to think that maybe there was a reason. How would she change her entire clan if she couldn't even talk to her crush? Now she couldn't even look at him. He must have felt the same way. Everyone around her thought she was pathetic. Her father, her sister, Neji, her teammates, and now even Naruto. Naruto froze in shock as tears streamed down the pre-teen's face and she rose, darting from the area before Naruto could utter a single word. His gaze followed the girl until she was gone from his sight. Half of him thought that the girl was, of course, being weird. However, a sliver of acknowledgement showed that he was seriously worried about the girl. He hoped he hadn't done anything to cause the sudden emotional change in the girl. Yeah, you just ed up, Kit. The QB barked in a calm tone, as calm as a bellowing demon could get. What? What did I do? What's wrong with her? Naruto asked, hoping he could find a way to fix whatever had just happened. She's hurting, Kit. That's all I can tell you. This is a problem you will have to fix on your own. Naruto frowned. Maybe he did come on too strong. He startled the girl, but why would she run off crying? For a split second, he wondered if Hinata felt just like the villagers. He wondered if she had hated him all along. Stop it, Kit. It's not like that at all. The fox coaxed the blonde as the thoughts began to sadden him. He could care less about what many people thought of him, but he had thought Hinata admired him the entire time. The demon knew that Naruto was still young, so he couldn't completely blame the blonde for being oblivious. Focus on your training for tomorrow. Naruto silently nodded his head, knowing that dwelling on the girl would distract from his training. Of course he wouldn't just push her to the side, opting instead to find out what was wrong with her during the Chunin exams. Besides, maybe pushing her away now would be a good thing. The thought itself both confused and hurt him. She was one of the only kind people to him, so he didn't want her to vanish from his life altogether. But if she were to be away from him, then he'd be able to get stronger and rebuild whatever bond they had over time. Kit, if you continue to practice tonight, you will be able to master the Tatsumaki Renden. You will have enough time to practice those other moves you've been working on as well. The fox was trying to refocus him, albeit with a bit more effort for his comfort. He'd be damned if Naruto was during the Chunin exams because he continued to neglect his training. Okay. Naruto sighed and created 5 clones. The clones looked at their creator with worry, all still feeling what he was. Drawing a kunai, Naruto lazily slid into his own little fighting stance. He held the kunai reverse-handed, his arm sticking straight out. His legs were spread wide and his other arm was pressed to his side. It was like a kenjutsu variation of judo. The clones sighed themselves before rushing the original all at once. Naruto spun effortlessly, plunging the kunai into one of the clones. As another one drew close, he brutally front snap kicked it into smoke. Spinning one more time, he used his forearm to block a jump kick from the third clone. The fourth clone used the distraction to sweep Naruto. Using the momentum from his backwards motion, he planted his hands on the ground and vaulted into a backflip. In the air, he flashed through hand signs before putting his fingers to his lips. Fuden. Kei's Yari. Wind technique. Wind javelin. After taking a deep inhale, Naruto fired one swift stream of wind down onto the 2 clones, destroying them instantly. As he landed, he cursed. The sounds of sizzling paper surrounded him. The last clone had surrounded him with exploding tags. Desperately looking around, he spotted the clone hiding in a tree. Quickly, he flared one last hand sign. The clone's eyes widened as it was switched with the original in a substitution jutsu, and was destroyed by its own trap. Naruto dropped from the tree, sighing in indignation. That's good, Kit. Quick and efficient. You're starting to show the true prowess of you shinobi. Naruto didn't respond for several seconds, mind drifting to everywhere and nowhere. 2 days of training still wasn't enough for him to dominate in the Chunin exams, but he had one small advantage. Everyone that knew him would be thinking that he's still the same weak, dead last. With the element of surprise and deception, he could at least catch many people off guard. Hey, Fox, if I master Tatsumaki Renden, I won't be efficient with that last jutsu. I can practice my Kei's Yari up to the point where it's strong enough to do real damage. I won't always be up against Cage Bunshins. Then I can focus on doing that last jutsu. I'd rather go into the exams with at least 2 decent jutsus and 1 experimental one. If that is what you wish. Naruto nodded, feeling grateful that the fox wasn't bothering him as much as usual. He kept his mouth shut, knowing that it wasn't permanent. His mind kept focused, trying desperately not to think of Hinata. The whole ordeal confused him greatly. Shouldn't he had just kept trying for Sakura? No, he couldn't do that. He knew he would never truly fall in love with Sakura, and she would most likely never give him the time of day anyway. Maybe the whole time he had been fooling himself, using Sakura as an excuse to not get close to the Hyuga. But he couldn't do that anymore. He was changing. Holding onto that part of his past wasn't going to help him grow. Whoever accepted the new him and respected the old him, they would be part of his future. Several people he knew were already going to be cut from his life. I guess, this is it. Whatever happens from this point on, I can't look back. He created 50 shadow clones and began his final preparations for the Chunin exams. Where the hell is he? Sakura's piercing voice roared from in front of the academy. Many participants entering the building gave the girl a deadly glare before continuing on their way. Sasuke grunted in annoyance at both Sakura's shrieking and Naruto's tardiness. Maybe Kakashi-sensei's rubbing off on the dobi. He huffed. Thinking back to the day before, he remembered his teammate saying he was going to talk to that red-haired kid behind the academy. Sasuke had shown up, hoping to catch the conversation, but the two only seemed to be standing there, staring into each other's eyes. It freaked him out for the most part, because they stood in place, unmoving for a half hour. Then they parted ways without a word, plunging the raven-haired boy into confusion. Naruto Baka, where've you been? Sakura screamed, bringing Sasuke back to reality. Naruto had the same attire as the day before, though cleaner. His gaze was down and his attention seemed to be far from the Chunin exams. Even Sakura's voice wasn't enough to bring the teen out of whatever thought he was having. Dobi, what's the deal? Sasuke prodded. Naruto slowly looked up, a look of worry on his face for only a second before it was replaced with a passive look. Nothing. Has Kakashi-sensei shown up yet? At your service. Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves, I smile in place. Did you need me, Naruto? Yay. A quick glance at his teammates and he sighed. No. Just wondering if you had shown up on time for once. Naruto's tone was low and even, as if he were depressed. Because of this, it was obvious that he was hiding something. Kakashi rose an eyebrow, though he wasn't interested enough to prod further into the situation. Well, I'm glad to see you've taken a step towards becoming a real shinobi, Naruto. Those dark colors will keep you hidden well. All three students' sweat dropped. Is there any other reason you're here other than to annoy us, sensei? Sakura deadpanned. Kakashi chuckled. Well, I was going to wish you luck. The first test will be in room 247. These exams aren't all fun and games. Your life will be in danger. I wouldn't have entered you if I didn't have complete confidence that you cool. Save it, sensei, we're late. Naruto interrupted and began to walk towards the building. Now Kakashi was alerted. Something's wrong here. Sakura and Sasuke looked after their teammate in shock. He was acting strange. Stranger than normal. Kakashi looked at the two and then back at Naruto. He couldn't confront him there without raising a ruckus. He'd have to wait, but he was going to find out what was going on. What could make the usually hyperactive blonde so solemn? Well, get going, you two. Kakashi faked a smile and waved, vanishing once again. Sasuke began walking towards the building, ignoring Sakura's attempts to ask him what he obviously didn't know. Neither could possibly understand what was making the blonde act the way he was. Inside, Naruto stood waiting by the stairs. He was looking down a hall towards a large group of genin standing in front of a door. Sasuke and Sakura walked up, following his gaze to the group. Naruto ba. Before Sakura could begin screaming, Naruto had grabbed her from behind and covered her mouth. Stop being so loud or you'll draw unnecessary attention. Now go, the boss is upstairs. In a silent puff of smoke, the clone dispersed. Sasuke frowned, though part of him wanted to laugh, seeing the disheveled and fuming Sakura. Sasuke began to head upstairs, Sakura only following because it was, well, Sasuke. Naruto stood in front of a similar-looking room. Baka, what the hell was that stunt back there? Sakura cried, stomping forward with a ready fist. She swung, and hit air. In the next second, Naruto had her arm twisted behind her back and she was pinned against the wall. Sasuke's mouth dropped and Sakura grew motionless. Save your strength for the exams. And stop trying to hit me, or I'll start retaliating. All of his words were even. It made her shiver, knowing that he could give her advice and threaten her all in one tone. Her mind was far behind the thought process of the position he had her in. Dobi, we're already late. What the hell did you drag us up here for? Sasuke called. Naruto pointed to the room number on the wall next to the door. That was the first floor. Kakashi-sensei said the room was 247. I'm pretty sure everyone else just saw the group down there and instantly decided that was the testing room. You can't just follow the crowd or you'll end up dead. Naruto was once again subject to the shocked gazes of his teammates. Blushing slightly, he turned from them and opened the door. They entered a wide room, full of Chunin exam hopefuls. Naruto spotted Gaara instantly leaning against a wall. The Sand Genin nodded towards Naruto and Naruto nodded back ever so slightly. No one caught the movement. Naruto was about to begin scanning the competition until a blur of purple and blonde soared past him. Sasuke-kun. A voice almost as loud as Sakura's shouted out. Without even having to turn around, Naruto knew Sasuke's number 2 fangirl had latched onto him. Beat it, Ino pig. Yep. Ino. Naruto thought with a sigh. She's pretty much a female version of me with a bad obsession problem and a tendency for sadism. I'll gut you. Sakura yelled out. I take that back. Sakura's the sadist. Yo. Naruto. You guys made it too. What's with the new get-up? Shikamaru lazily asked while lazily trudging forward, showing the world exactly how lazy he was. A few steps behind Shikamaru was his forever-eating friend, Choji. This team, together, was a force to be reckoned with, Naruto knew. With Shikamaru's brain, Choji's brute strength, and Ino's, well, loud annoying voice, they would definitely be an obstacle were they to come across each other. On nice terms, Naruto had his exact opinions about all three. Shikamaru was the coolest person he'd ever met, hands down. Lazy as all living hell, but everything he did do, he made it look effortless. Plus the pineapple-haired teen was also one of the only nice people to Naruto. They were good friends. He wasn't sure if he could beat the Nara in a one-on-one due to his superior tactical thinking. Choji was jolly. That was the only way he could describe him. Mainly for the fact that Choji tried to smash Naruto every time he called him fat. They were friends because of Shikamaru, though they did have a few things in common, aka Ichiraku's ramen. Without knowing what type of training he's been through, Naruto didn't know if he could win. But if Choji hadn't worked on his speed, then Naruto would have no problem. Ino. He almost rolled his eyes thinking of the girl. She may not have been as bad as Sakura, but damn, she was almost as annoying. They had shared little to no interaction during the academy, except for eating lunch together once. And that was because she had almost passed out from dieting. He never knew if she really appreciated what he had done for her, and as of late didn't care. Sasuke was all she thought about. She would be too easy to beat. Hey, looks like the old rookie 9 is back together again. A series of barks followed the brash voice. Kiba and Shino walked towards the small group, Akamaru in its partner's jacket. Yo, it's dog breath and Akamaru. Ino called happily. Kiba scowled at the blonde. Hey, where's Hinata? Choji asked. Naruto's eyes widened and he looked around, noticing that she was indeed missing. She said she would await seeing everyone until the exams have started. She has undergone a change, you could say. Shino spoke in his usual monotone. What do you mean? Naruto asked, speaking for the first time since entering the room. Several of the genin jumped. Whoa, Naruto, is that you? Kiba asked. Naruto ignored the boy and looked at Shino for an answer to his question. It is hard to explain, Uzumaki-san. Please await the exams to see for yourself. Naruto frowned, hearing the saddened tone in Shino's voice. In the back of his mind, he had a feeling that whatever was wrong with Hinata was his fault. Naruto, what are you wearing? Ino asked, actually detaching herself from Sasuke to his and Sakura's delight. Just normal clothes. Nothing flashy, he replied. Naruto walked away from the group, leaning on the wall. This brought up questions in all of the Genin's minds. Naruto didn't care for the looks, though he did catch Shino looking for a split second longer than the rest. Shino had what could be called a silent friendship with Naruto. Until recently, he never knew what the boy was feeling. But now, just looking at small body movements, Naruto could tell what the bug user was feeling, if only slightly. With his clan's techniques, Shino would be a big problem. He wouldn't be surprised if he had already put a bug on every single last participant in the room already. Kiba was almost just like the old Naruto. The only difference was that he actually had his own strength to back up most of his words. And he was 10 times wire. Actually, he was wire now than he was in the academy. They were good friends in the academy, but now, Kiba had followed the crowd. He was underestimating Naruto too. Because of his brashness, he would be a mediocre challenge, a little more than a warm-up for Naruto. Naruto frowned as the last person was Hinata. In the academy, she had won every single sparring match against the girls. Actually, she only ever lost to Sasuke. Outside of that, he didn't know any of her skills. He cursed himself, starting to understand why he should have been training with the girl. She was far too timid to actually utilize any of her latent abilities. But Shino had said she changed, and the way he spoke meant it was for the worse. Hey, you guys should be a bit quieter. You'll bring unnecessary attention to yourselves. You're making it obvious that you're new to the exams. Naruto looked up to see a gray-haired older teen talking to his friends. He didn't move, analyzing the newcomer. Something just didn't feel right about the teen. Naruto could have sworn he smelled snakes all around the boy. In his musings, he found out the teen's name was Kabuto. Gotta remember that. I've never seen him around the village at all. Maybe he's. Naruto's thoughts trailed off. The sound of vomiting brought him back to his senses. Kabuto was on his knees, coughing up whatever had just occupied his stomach. A sound ninja wrapped in bandages stood over him. Naruto ignored what was happening, taking this time to move closer to the sand team since everyone else's attention was on his group. Pretty cold of you to ignore your friends like that. A female voice stopped Naruto in his tracks. Pretty cold of you to ignore your teammates in the midst of so many enemy ninja. Naruto called back, turning to face the girl. She was the sound kunoichi that had come with the other two. She had long dark hair and wore camouflaged pants. Why aren't you over there with the rest of them? She asked with folded arms. Why do you care? We aren't gonna get answers if we both stand here asking questions. The girl said with a smirk. True. To answer your questions, I have other things to do than entertain anxiety-driven children. Now how about you answer my question? Naruto smirked back at the girl. I care because you're actually kind of cute. I'm flattered and impressed that you'd be so straightforward with an enemy nin. We're not enemies until the exams start, right? Besides, you seem different. Her face became serious. How so? Naruto asked, tensing at the statement. I don't know. Something about you is familiar. Kin. Get your over here. One of her teammates called. Shit. Got to go. I look forward to seeing you again. She said with a wave and ran to her team. Fox, should I know that girl? No. However, you are more connected to her than you know. When the time comes, I will reveal why to you. Naruto didn't pry further. He knew that the QB was trying to keep him focused on the exams, so he would worry about the kin girl later. Seconds later, and the proctor for the first part of the exam had entered the room. Morino Ibiki, head of the T&I division of Konoha's Anbu. He informed the genin that the first part of the exam was a written portion, consisting of 9 questions, and in the end a final 10th question. The genin began to file into another classroom, taking assigned seats. Naruto sat down at 4C and looked around the room as more and more people entered. Wolf whistles drew his attention to the back of the room and his eyes widened. Hinata walked down the row, her winter jacket nowhere to be seen. She was left in her black short-sleeved undershirt and her black ninja pants. Holy! Her rack is huge. Naruto's jaw hung open, getting snickers from several of the ninja around him. In reality, they too wondered how a 12-year-old could develop that fast. Hinata never noticed the people around her due to her being focused on the paper she held. Her assigned seat, 4B, her heart skipped a beat. Naruto's gaze made her blush, but it also brought tears to her eyes. Why? Why Kami-sama? Am I really to be punished so? She ignored his gaze and sat down next to him, hands in her lap and eyes on the desk. No, I don't care anymore. Hi, Hinata, Naruto stammered out. She shifted slightly, gazing at him out of the corner of her eyes. She held a passive look, but it was just short of a scowl. Naruto felt his stomach sink. Hinata's eyes looked dead. She held his gaze for several seconds. Seeing that he had nothing to say, she looked away sighing in disgust. Okay, that actually hurt. Naruto looked away as well. Now he was truly worried. The two didn't look at each other as the test rules were explained, the tests were handed out, and even when silence enveloped the room. Hinata felt like crying. She had told herself she would stop harboring feelings for the blonde, but it was getting harder every second. Just being around him was bad. The words on the paper began to blur as tears entered her eyes. Why? Why am I pathetic to you, Naruto-kun? No matter how much he wanted to fix things with the young Hyuga heiress, he knew he needed to focus on the test. Scanning over the paper, he almost immediately came to a single conclusion. I can't do this shit. It was impossible. Nothing on the paper had been taught to them at the academy. Of course, Kakashi had taught them jack shit, so that probably factored in as well. Seriously, the questions weren't meant for genins. So Naruto narrowed down the results to 2 single options. Either they really expect us to answer this shit, and me, Sakura, and Sasuke are going to fail miserably because of a neglectful bastard sensei. Or the more likely, they want us to cheat our off without getting caught, the way ninja would take a test. Naruto was about to do exactly that until he noticed a smudge at the top right-hand corner of the test. His brow furrowed and he looked at it closer. It looked like a tiny N. What the hell? Looking at the illustrations to some of the questions, he began to find more smudge-like letters. At first, he thought they were typos, but then he began to put the letters together. N, O, R, I, G, he continued on until he could find no more. His eyes would have widened, but he didn't want to draw attention to himself or be suspected of cheating. The message was clear. No right answers. Good, Kit. Good. That's it. There are no right answers. Then what's the purpose of this crap then? He paused. That really is it then. They want us to cheat without getting caught. Which means, someone here isn't a genin and has fake answers. They would know we were cheating without even having to catch us. As time passed, Ibiki spoke up, prepared to give the 10th question. He sprayed bullshit about quitting now and taking the exams another year. Naruto paid it no attention, knowing that it was all lies. A majority of the room raised their hands and gave up on the spot. All of the rookie 9 remained. Now then, on to the 10th question. Everyone that stayed, has passed. He smirked at the shocked expressions on the faces of the genin. What the hell? What do you mean we pass? What about the 10th question? The Suna Kunoichi Temari asked, showing more frustration than she usually let show. After an explanation on information gathering, Ibiki effectively made the genins lose their appetites. His head was covered in scars, and some looked ready to reopen at the touch of a feather. Sorry I asked. Temari groaned, dropping her head to the table. Hinata, Whatever I did yesterday, I'm sorry. Naruto whispered. The Hyuga heiress froze up, eyes widening slightly. He's apologizing. The Hyuga heiress instantly went pale. He doesn't even know why I'm upset with him. Oh Kami-sama, what have I done? Before the starry-eyed girl could explain herself, a blur of tan crashed through the windows. Two kunai lodged into the upper parts of room, revealing a banner overhead. What's up, chumps? I'm the deadly, sexy, Anko Mitarashi, and I'll be your proctor for the second part of the exams. Silence enveloped the room. Crickets chirped, getting Shino several glares from his teammates. Too soon. The special Jonin sweated and looked at Ibiki. Like always. Anko's demeanor instantly changed, and she smirked evilly at the group of genin. Well, looks like we've got a decent turnout. Not too many, not too few. This is going to be fun. Every one of you chumps meet me at the entrance to the forest of happy kittens and rainbows in half an hour. Don't you mean the forest of death? Ibiki asked. Exactly. She called with a sadistic chuckle before shining from the room. Holy shit, that chick's almost as scary as my mom. Shikamaru called, getting nervous chuckles from friends and foes alike. Everyone began to leave, save Hinata and Naruto. I need to talk to you, Hinata. Naruto whispered. Hinata's gaze held his, and though she was listening finally, he could see that she still held indifference towards him. She never hated me, that was foolish to think that. But why can't I figure out what's wrong with her now? Naruto's heart ached at not hearing Kun at the end of his name. Forgive me. I may have misunderstood our positions yesterday. But please, give me some time to think. This is the first time you've actually talked to me. Naruto said, not wanting the girl to go. Wah! Shock settled in as she realized that it was. She couldn't put together a sentence the day before, but now here she was telling him that she wanted to be away from him. She looked away sadly. Hinata, for the record, I like you a lot. So if I gave you any doubts about that yesterday, I'm sorry. I figured, she said silently. Just now, I had a feeling that it was all in my imagination. She laughed sadly, tears starting to fall. I went home and told my father to go himself. Naruto rose an eyebrow. You did what? I thought that you thought I was pathetic. I thought that you were looking down on me too, Naruto. Wiping tears away, she looked at him. Her gaze was more calculating than before. If you felt that way, then nothing else mattered. So I finally went off on my father. And you know the funny part? He acknowledged me for it. He actually said that I was acting like a Hyuga. Shit. I think she's lost it. Naruto gulped. I started to think then. If acting like a Hyuga was the only way to get acknowledgement, then I should start acting like it. Her fists were clenched. But you say that you like me now, and I'm wondering, should I be happy and go back to how I used to be, or should I give up on you and continue to get the acknowledgement of my father? Do both. Naruto said quickly, not wanting an answer to that statement. Hinata looked at him confused. Hinata, don't give up on me. I know I did things wrong, I should have been there for you. It took me this long to figure out that the world doesn't revolve around me. I should have talked to you the moment I knew you were watching me train. The Hyuga blushed deeply, wondering how he could have known the entire time. Be my friend and still get the acknowledgement of your father. If you proved yourself to him last night, then you know that you're not pathetic. You just needed to fall before you could truly stand on your own. I'm sorry that it was me that had to make you fall though. Hinata's mind was developing like Naruto's now. She was thinking more than she used to. So analyzing everything Naruto had just said, she realized where her mistake lied. Naruto-kun, it wasn't your fault. I preemptively thought that you were looking down on me. I know now that you weren't, and I'm happy for that. But, Naruto added sadly. He was happy that she wasn't upset with him anymore, but he was sure that she had more to say. You know what I feel about you. Naruto nodded at her statement, a small blush forming on both of their faces. I can't pursue those feelings knowing that I'm only going to make you weaker. I want to get stronger, Naruto-kun, so I can be of use to you and to myself. As of now, her next words would haunt Naruto for the duration of the day. We just aren't compatible. He knew it was true. They both were waking up as ninja, a little too late. They wouldn't be able to do anything with their current conditions. Hinata needed to be able to stand up for herself more and Naruto needed to get stronger. Hinata-chan, I'm not waiting though. I don't want to go about like this. It shouldn't have taken so much for us to start feeling this way. Let's get stronger together, until we are compatible. Naruto-kun, I don't know what the future holds anymore. I had always thought that your determination would make everything better. But my doubts yesterday made that vanish. I can't go back to that anymore, and the reality is that my future is going to lead to more pain. She shivered as the thoughts brought more tears to her eyes. Naruto was respecting her more and more. She wasn't blindly throwing herself on him how he thought she would have done the day before. For the first time, she was thinking of herself over everyone else. Hinata-chan, I can promise you that things will always get better, no matter how bad they get. If you want to look towards the future, then take my hand. Naruto said, extending his hand. Naruto-kun, we may not be compatible now, but if we get stronger together, I want to be. He trailed off, a blush crossing his face. Hinata turned red as well and took his hand. Until we're stronger, then we're just friends, she said with a hint of sadness. Then you're still willing to be more later? Naruto asked. Hinata's blush grew and she smiled, nibbling on the tip of her finger. Naruto smiled warmly. Seeing her do that reminded him of the sweet girl she was in the academy. He had caught her before she had completely lost herself. I don't know, Naruto-kun, it depends. She said slyly. On what? Naruto asked, genuinely confused. A devious grin formed on her face. If you can keep the new me interested. She said before rising and leaving a stunned blonde in her wake. Ibiki looked at the scene silently. Well, kid, looks like you got a game of hard to get to start playing. He called with a chuckle. Naruto looked back and forth between the door and Ibiki. The Chunin exams. This is gonna be much harder. At the moment he wasn't very happy. Again, he found himself in a situation that he wasn't completely prepared for, nor had he taken into account when he decided to get stronger. Feeling really annoyed, he cursed himself for not doing a little digging into what the events of the exam would be. Nowhere in the last 2 days had he thought that he'd have to traverse the forest of death. It wasn't that he was scared or felt that he wasn't ready. He was sure that using stealth, like any real ninja with common sense, would help greatly in surviving. No, he was pissed at the fact that he didn't pack anywhere near enough ramen for the journey. Is there anything that could happen today that's not complete bullshit? Naruto groaned as he and his team awaited the proctor for the Forest of Death part of the exam. You should have studied instead, doing whatever it was you were doing these past 2 days. Sakura shrugged, surprisingly not being as loud as usual. Naruto pegged it to him scaring the shit out of her earlier that day. It brought a smile to him, knowing that she was at least acknowledging the fact that he wasn't the same dead last he pretended to be several days ago. I was training. And that means you knew that we would have to do the Forest of Death, didn't you? Naruto narrowed his eyes at the girl who looked away sweating. Yeah, but I learned after we met up yesterday. Sasuke-kun was the one who gave me the idea to look up the events. Don't put me in it. Sasuke mumbled as he stood assessing the competition. Sakura paled and Naruto only shook his head in exasperation. I guess it doesn't matter now. As long as we stick together, this shouldn't be too hard. Naruto said, still thinking of how much of a liability Sasuke's ego was going to be in Sakura, in general. Stick together. Stay out of my way and then this'll be easy. You might actually learn a thing or two about being a real ninja. Sasuke shot at Naruto. Sakura beamed, her inner self shouting agreements. Naruto held his head in frustration. You know what? If it weren't for the fact that this is a team exam, I would let them both get eaten by a snake that's sure to show up in there. Naruto immediately frowned, looking around for several key people. First, His gaze landed on Gaara. Gaara looked forward towards the gate, but his eyes were on Naruto as well. With a nod, Gaara faced away and walked towards his elder siblings. Next, Naruto caught sight of the sound ninja. Kin was sitting on the ground, seeming lost in the clouds as her two teammates were arguing about something vulgar that Naruto couldn't really pick up. Third, Hinata stood with her arms folded under her, a stern, somewhat dark look on her face. Naruto could see a trace of the small smile that he had seen before, and a slight tint of pink on her cheeks. She hid it well, but he could tell that she was still a bit embarrassed for not wearing her jacket. She looked towards him and they both blushed, turning away just as fast. Finally, Naruto's gaze landed on the grass nin team. None seemed to be paying anyone attention. Naruto narrowed his eyes but looked away before anyone could see him looking. A snake in the grass, Naruto thought before sensing something off. A kunai was speeding straight for his face. On instinct, Naruto pulled his own out, deflecting the kunai in the air. With a quick hop and turn, he caught the kunai and held both up towards the throat of the assailant that was behind him. Of course, one Anko Mitarashi stood behind the teen, shocked, speechless. Several gazes about the crowd looked on in awe, none more so than his own teammates. Wow. And here I thought that you weren't paying attention. The special Jonin said with a dark smile. Hey, sorry. Naruto said, putting his own kunai away and holding Anko's towards her. She took it with a smile and then slammed her fist into his gut. Naruto dropped to his knees coughing. Damn, she hits harder than Zabuza. Never point a kunai at me unless you're prepared to use it. She whispered into his ear before licking the tip. She stood and returned to the front of the crowd. Naruto, are you okay? Sakura asked, actually worried for her teammate. However, her gaze slowly shifted as a large amount of ki was radiating from somewhere off to their right. Looking over, they saw Hinata with her eyes closed and a tick mark on her forehead. Her brow twitched and she seemed to be tensed. Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, at least I know she's going to get what's coming to her. After Anko explained the rules for the next part of the exam and handed the students' death waivers to sign, bringing lots of smiles to the more sadistic genin, the students were positioned in front of several of the gates to the forest. A buzzer began to count down, dropping the surroundings into silence, and bringing anxiety to almost all present. Hearts began to race and sweat began to form. Once the last buzzer sounded, all of the participants dashed into the forest, except for Naruto. Sasuke and Sakura slowed to a stop several meters in. Dobi, what the hell are you doing? You've been acting strange, and my tolerance is running thin. Sasuke growled, eyes flashing Sharingan. Naruto rolled his eyes at the Uchiha. You know, I'd be impressed that you just said more words than you ever have in your whole life if it weren't for the fact that your ego is making you think you have a tolerance level. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Sasuke shot back. Naruto sighed. Look, just shut up and wait a minute. Stop it, Naruto. We're just wondering what the hell's your problem. Sakura bellowed out. Naruto didn't entertain the two with a response again. Instead, he created a clone. Get Anko-chan and go to the Hokage ASAP. He said. The clone responded with a hi. Naruto jumped into the trees with his teammates and went right past them. Sasuke and Sakura looked on in confusion and annoyance. What's he hiding from us? Sakura wondered aloud. Sasuke just grit his teeth and growled, following after Naruto swiftly. Outside forest, Anko had watched the whole little scene with mild interest. The blonde kid was proving to be good entertainment. Her curiosity was piqued when he dismissed his teammates and sent a clone for her. She grew a small smirk at hearing him call her Anko-chan. That kid is dead next time I see him. She thought half-heartedly as she chewed on a dango stick. Well, let's go. The clone spoke to her and with a nod, she began to follow it. The kid knew she was listening, so it didn't even need to explain the situation yet. She was finding herself impressed more and more by the genin. If she didn't know any better, she'd think the boy was being influenced by his tenant, but the air of the demon wasn't about him at all. What's the deal, brat? She asked as they began to traverse the Konoha rooftops. There are ears everywhere. Wait until we get to the Hokage, please. The clone responded dead seriously. This put Anko on edge and her mood instantly became serious as well. She looked ahead, a slight frown on her face. Yeah, this kid is definitely entertaining. She didn't ask any more questions and the silence began to unease her. They reached the Hokage office quickly and used the shinobi entrance, aka, the window. Anko-san, Naruto-kun, what is going on? Shouldn't you be at the Chunin exams? The third immediately asked. Don't know. This is a clone of the brat, and he dragged me here saying it was important. Naruto bowed. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, but this is an emergency. The boss. Who? The real Naruto. He met with the one-tailed Jinchuriki this morning. The what? Both the Hokage and Anko shouted together. The clone sighed. Please let me finish. I'll answer any and all questions at the end. The two older shinobi frowned but complied. Anko was sweating, not knowing that there was another Jinchuriki in the village, while Sarutobi was on edge at the fact that Naruto knew about it. As I was saying, he met with Gaara this morning and learned of a certain person who's planning an invasion during the exams. Sarutobi's eyes shot open but he remained silent. Anko sat down, taking in more information than she had been expecting that day. In all honesty, she thought the day would consist of eating dango and watching kids beat the living shit out of each other. The Aikibi has been preventing Gaara from sleeping, threatening to take over him at the soonest possible chance, but the Kyuubi put an end to that. Tension instantly filled the room to the brim. Before you start wondering, no, the Kyuubi can't take control of me. We've come to terms with our fates and decided to make our existence together as least displeasing as possible. Oh, and did I mention he told me who my father was? Anko rose an eyebrow as Sarutobi's pipe fell from his now gaping mouth. Anko narrowed her eyes at the old man. Wait, who's his father? By the look on your face, you knew and didn't tell him. She held a hint of venom, but it wasn't enough to get herself in trouble. The Hokage swallowed and cleared his throat. I believe Naruto has asked us to hold off questions until the end. Don't worry, Anko-chan. My father is the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. The clone spoke nonchalantly, making Sarutobi's head bang into the desk. Anko froze on spot. You say who did the what and the where? Anko stuttered. Isn't it kind of obvious? I mean, we have the same eye color, hairstyle and color. I was born on the day he sealed the Kyuubi into a baby and it was against the law to reveal who my parents were. It all sort of just falls into place, don't you think? The Hokage began banging his head even harder while Anko just face-palmed, mumbling something about stupid obvious clues. Naruto, please start over from the beginning. This is all so much to take in at once. Sarutobi said, folding his hands beneath his chin. The clone frowned but began to explain everything that happened starting 2 days prior. Throughout the whole ordeal, Anko actually sat patiently listening to everything, and then the mood grew darker as Naruto neared his conversation with Gaara. For the first 5 minutes, Gaara freaked out about how I was able to enter his mind. The place was a mess, covered in sand and shit. That's when he showed me where the Aikibi was held. The Kyuubi's cage is sealed tight, in a sewer-like place, but I guess that's just my ed-up mind. But Gaara's, the Aikibi's seal was a rusted cell in an old decaying prison. Every time the thing lashed out at the cage, the bars rattled and Gaara held his head in pain. The seal was very, very weak. That's when our minds converged and we were standing between both the Kyuubi's cage and the Aikibi's. Flashback. What is the meaning of this? What is happening? Gaara looked between both cages, eyes wandering swiftly. He turned to Naruto and held his hand up towards him. The seal on the Aikibi's cage began to glow slightly as sand began to rise towards the blonde-haired genin. Stop, Gaara, Naruto said, eyes narrowed. The seal on the Kyuubi's cage began to glow faintly as well, and flames began to swirl around the joined area. The sand began to burn into glass instantly and shatter. You fool, you cannot face the QB container inside of his own domain. The Aikibi bellowed in its annoying scratchy voice. The QB? Gaara asked, eyes growing wide. The nine-tailed demon. You are a Jinchuriki as well. It seems you have lost your touch Shukaku. You couldn't even sense me when we first met. Pathetic. The QB laughed. No fair. Why do you have to always be so mean? She yelled, thrashing against the cage and making Gaara drop to his knees. Naruto frowned. What's your problem? He yelled at the monster. Save it, Kit. She's losing her mind. Look at that seal. Naruto gazed at the sloppy kanji and saw that with each strike, it damn near became perfect. He frowned and wondered what was with it. Can you guess the problem here? The fox said, hoping Naruto could evaluate the situation on his own. Naruto began to think, looking at the seal, and then the state of the Aikibi's prison. The seal is poorly done. It's like the person knew how it worked but didn't care for the actual process of applying it. The Aikibi probably saw how weak it was and has been trying to escape ever since. Yes. You saw how the seal on my cage prevents me from moving the bars even an inch. With the taste of freedom so close, she probably figured she could bust out if she tried long enough. Doing so each and every day, just to have that half seal come into effect must have torn at her sanity. So it's not her fault? Naruto asked, starting to feel a little remorse for the beast. No, she's been an annoying bitch since day one. The QB laughed as Naruto face planted. But he was also impressed. Naruto was using his perceptive nature extremely well, and it was showing the true prowess that made his father famous. Naruto still wasn't the brightest and was still a bit headstrong. His overall progression from 2 days prior was top-notch, but he was still far from achieving his goal. Besides, it wasn't an overnight thing. Oi, Fox, how do we help Gaara? Naruto asked. Help me. Gaara was still holding his head since the monster still thrashed about wildly. Why? Come on, I can see what you're going through. No one should have to suffer like this. If your life was anything like mine, you've been beaten without knowing why, segregated, hated, and scorned by the people you cared about. Worst case scenario, people have tried to assassinate you, right? Naruto spoke calmly but his gaze held sorrow. You, as well. The Aikibi had stopped thrashing, staring at the scene. It's our fates. And there are 7 more people out there who are going through the exact same thing as we speak. Naruto knelt in front of Gaara and held out a hand. Life is ed up and as Jinchuriki we have the right to want to crush anyone who comes in our way. Both demons chuckled at the statement but Gaara looked up at the blonde confused. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do though. Don't you think it'll be a lot easier if you got people to accept you by being you instead of the demon, no offense. Naruto looked up at the Aikibi who only shrugged. But, after so many years, all I've done is. I'm but a weapon for Suna, they will never see me as more. Gaara hung his head but Naruto forced him to look up, releasing a bit of ki. Don't start this self-pity shit. I get enough of it when Sasuke gets those moods. Hey, Uchiha PMS, priceless. Shut up, Fox. Like I was saying, you won't ever know what people will think until you try. Most people in my village hate me because of the fox, but I've already made friends that accept me for me. Hell, even Sasuke considers me a friend sometimes. I bet your brother and sister worry for you all the time, even if you can't tell. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but if you don't try it will never happen. The blonde paused and looked up. The ceiling of the prison gave way, turning into the open sky. The Aikibi's bars extended into the bright sky and began to mirror the Kyubi's. This is nice, the demon spoke as she looked around. You don't deserve this. Kyubi spoke and laid down, seeming to take a nap. Naruto, how have you been able to smile after going through so much? You know what it's like, so how? Gaara folded his arms but tears were in his eyes. He couldn't believe this was happening. He wanted to defend himself, but there was nothing to defend against. Even the Aikibi had calmed down. I smile because I think about how much worse life could be. No, I don't just grit my teeth and wither the pain like many people think I do. But I'm not going to make my situation worse than what it already is. I smile because I know that each and every day is a chance for me to prove them all wrong. To show them who I truly am. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the fourth Hokage and future Godime Hokage. Naruto smirked at the title and suddenly a Hokage hat fell from the sky, landing on his head. Seconds later a Cage hat fell on Gaara's head. What is this? Gaara asked, moving the sun cover to the side. You might want to have a goal or a dream too. It helps to keep you sane. Well, she kind of went the opposite way on that one though. I'm a wild animal kid, we don't like cramped spaces. Shukaku grew defensive. Ah, you sure it's not just because me and Hachibi used to stuff you in the Sanbi's shell all the time? Kyubi joked. Sanbi equals three-tailed turtle. Wow Kyubi, you were always a weren't you? Naruto deadpanned. My middle name. I don't know how that should be taken. Gaara said evenly. Naruto spun on heel, eyes widening. Did he just make a joke? Gaara scratched his cheek and looked away. Kit, I would love to sit here and socialize since I truly am enjoying the company, but you have a bit more training to do before the exams. Let's get this over with now. Naruto groaned but nodded. He was honestly having fun with the two demons himself. Weird, right? Shukaku, you may not like it, but you will have to accept your fate. Escape is no longer an option from this child. Truly, I may have known it all along. But the sight of this damn worthless seal infuriates me. The accommodation of this place is terrible and the only entertainment I get is by having Gaara slay people. Can you blame me for being a little loopy? She sighed in defeat. If you're honestly not as bad as you've been these past few years, then you're not a little loopy, you've plunged off the deep end. Gaara spat glaring. Naruto chuckled. The fox was the same way, threatening to devour my flesh and such. Both demons blushed slightly and groaned. Give it a rest, Kit. Now down to business. A calligraphy brush and ink appeared, falling into Naruto's hands. All you have to do is smooth the lines of that seal and add several that I tell you to. What are you doing? Shukaku asked. Even though I think you're an ugly, fat, disgusting rodent, I'm going to make your imprisonment a bit more bearable. The rest is up to you and your container. The Aikibi scoffed at the insult but didn't argue. Naruto set to work, concentrating hard as it was the first time he was doing seals. Of course he wouldn't be able to duplicate them anytime soon, nor would he have been able to do a seal from scratch. With the Kyubi coaching him it was made simple, but it wasn't an art Naruto would be able to learn quickly, even if his father was a seal master. Is this it? Naruto asked and got a nod from the fox. Now I'm going to give you a bit of my chakra so you can power it up. Place your hand on the seal and begin channeling chakra into it. Naruto did as told. Blue chakra began to feed into the seal and the bars of the prison began to creak and groan. Soon, red chakra began to blaze around the seal and the bars shined like new. The bars extended and grew, making the cell itself bigger. Once it was done, it was just a bit smaller than the Kyubi's. Naruto, I can't thank you enough for this, Gaara said as tears actually left his eyes. He wiped them away quickly, trying his hardest to hold his stoic demeanor. It failed as Naruto put a hand on his shoulder. I haven't slept in years. Then let's get out of here so you can get a quick nap in before the exams. Naruto stated with a smile. He was happy for Gaara. But more so, he felt like he had truly taken a step to becoming a great shinobi. Being able to help another person who was just like him, it brought the greatest sense of pride and joy to him that he'd ever felt in his life. To him, he had just become Hokage. Comparing the looks of Gaara from the day before and then, he knew that he had truly done something worthy of his father. Maybe even greater. This is what I want. This is how I'm going to live my life. He thought proudly. Wait, Naruto. There's something that I must tell you though. Gaara said, finally falling back into his monotone, though he held a small smirk now. My father, the Cage, he has allied with Otogakur in an attempt to stage an invasion against Konoha during the exams. They planned on using me to distract you all while he and a monster known as Orochimaru slayed the Hokage. Orochimaru. The Orochimaru of the Sannin that went rogue a few days before I was born. Orochimaru. Yes. He is in disguise as a grass ninja, but his ultimate motive remains unclear to us all. This is bad, Naruto thought. There's no way in hell Konoha is ready for an invasion from both Suna and Oto. What are you going to do, Naruto? Gaara asked, not knowing how things would play out. He knew even if Naruto went to the Hokage, it wouldn't change a thing. The pieces were almost completely set. I'm going to tell the Hokage, but not until after the exams have started. We don't want to draw attention from the wrong people. Plus, we should let the exams continue as normal to let your father and Orochimaru think that things are going exactly as they planned. That's brilliant, Kit. Your thinking is becoming quicker. I'm a fox, I'm supposed to be cunning. Naruto said with a grin. It was true. Though he didn't call himself a nine-tailed demon, he had to admit that foxes and strangely enough toads were his favorite animals. If that is all, then I would like to get some rest, Naruto. Gaara called, drooping slightly. Naruto agreed and the two Jinchuriki decided to part ways. End flashback. Both the Hokage and Anko sat in both shock and horror. The story itself seemed so unbelievable, but at the same time they could tell that Naruto wasn't lying. Feeling his chakra, they knew that he wasn't being influenced by the demon either. But both older nin also had their own lines of thought about the information that was just revealed. The Hokage held a pensive look, staring sternly ahead. So Orochimaru and the Kazekage are staging a coup. I doubt that Suna would truly betray us like this, so Orochimaru must be threatening them. This is most disturbing, but Naruto's plan does seem the most viable. I can silently prepare my own forces, but research must be done first. He sighed, knowing that he couldn't rely on the Kazekage's children without getting themed. In the words of Shikamaru, this was very troublesome. Anko sat silently, her eyes on the ground. Naruto looked over to her and frowned. From the research that he had been doing, he knew that Anko was the last apprentice of Orochimaru. I was only 8, she thought, gritting her teeth. 8 years old and in love with that son of a bitch. Tears entered her eyes and her nails dug into the armrests of the chair. Anko-chan, I know how you must feel. The pain, Naruto began, but Anko turned a hard glare on him. How the do you know how I feel? I was betrayed by that snake bastard. What the hell would you know? I was an orphan. I was alone and he was the only one that acted like he cared for me. What the would you know about pain? Anko stopped short as she saw the look on the genin's face. The clone stood and dispelled itself. Anko's eyes widened as she realized what she had just said. Her heart actually hurt. The look on the face of the clone before it vanished was just like hers once she found out that Orochimaru had betrayed the village. Anko, Sarutobi spoke low. Be calm. Naruto is not one to stop. I don't need any holier than thou shit, no offense. I'm a Jonin and should have handled that better. She stood and bowed to the Hokage. I'll go talk to him once he reaches the tower. You may have a chance to do so sooner. Because of the fact that Orochimaru is indeed in the village, we can't just allow him to have free roam in the forest of death. We'll need a covert surveillance group in there ASAP. He sat up in his chair, a dark look upon his face. Orochimaru will not have his way. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura had been traversing in complete silence. The last two were thinking of their usually exuberant comrade and his newly found don't give a shit attitude. Sasuke was actually worried about the blonde, thinking that it was something they had done to make him act that way. He didn't respond the same to his taunts of Dobi and even refused to make eye contact anymore. It was true that he and Naruto were bitter rivals, going as far as to promise each other they wouldn't die just so they could fight against each other one day. His Uchiha pride had always made him feel like he was better than him, but now he was wondering what could have made the blonde so distant. Sakura on the other hand was thinking of how hard she was going to hit the blonde for being socially distant. Though she wouldn't admit it, she liked the way he doted over her. With all the times Sasuke had rejected her, she needed someone there to act like they cared for her. She was still too naive to think of what her rejections would do to the Jinchuriki. Suddenly, Naruto dropped down into a clearing. His two teammates followed swiftly, anxious to see what the problem was. What is it now, Dobi? Sasuke asked, though with less criticism. Go on ahead, Naruto stated darkly. What do? Sakura began but saw his fist clenched tightly. She saw his shoulders trembling, as if he were about to cry. Naruto, what's wrong? Just go, he called, his voice quivering and laced with malice. Sasuke felt his building ki and swallowed. Sasuke walked over to Sakura and grabbed her arm. Let's go, he said. But, what about? Sasuke shook his head. He jumped into the trees and Sakura followed. She looked back only to see Naruto's hair blocking his face. Tears fell slowly. As his two comrades left his view, he turned towards a tree to his right. I know you're there. Just come out and do what you need to do. Naruto spoke bitterly. Amazing that you were able to sense us. I wonder if your flames of youth burn as bright as Sasuke's. Rock Lee shouted as he landed in the clearing. Who are you? Naruto asked as he never let his guard down. Ten and Neji followed behind Rock Lee. We're Team Guy. I'm Ten, that's Rock Lee and this is Neji. The girl spoke, giving Naruto a warm smile. Neji turned away coldly. That Sasuke person has gone ahead, Lee. We have no reason to be here with fodder. Naruto's brow twitched. Fodder. That is most unyouthful Neji-kun. My deepest apologies. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto said before flashing through hand signs and creating a dozen clones. Team Guy jumped back, getting into their battle positions. Hey, what are you doing? We didn't come here to fight. Ten called. Naruto was silent. Neji noticed that he wasn't looking at them and activated his Byakugan. Neji. Ten gasped. He held a finger to his mouth. Naruto nodded. We're surrounded. Hinata, Shino, and Kiba had made it a good distance into the forest, deciding to make it close to the tower before they began to acquire the opposite scroll. They landed in a small clearing, Hinata scanning the area with her Byakugan before giving the sign for clear. Kiba instantly fell to his back, Akamaru laying on his chest. Man, I'm beat. We haven't traveled that fast since that day Kurenai-sensei caught us peeking in on the hot springs. He called with a chuckle. Correction. She caught you peeking in on the hot springs. Shino said as he settled down for a quick rest as well. His gaze left his uninhibited comrade to settle on their female partner. She was standing still in a pose that he hadn't seen before. 64 Palms defense, her eyes were closed and she held one hand in front of her face in a single hand sign. Shino's bugs began to stir unpleasantly. Hinata, what is it you are about to do? Kiba looked over as well as he saw Hinata stock still, deep in concentration. You okay? He asked. The wind began to blow and leaves began to drift all over the clearing. As many of them surrounded Hinata, she slowly put both hands out to the side. Shino stood up as Kiba just looked on confused. Shino, what's going on? Kiba asked, moving to a sitting position. Shino's bugs grew irate. A defense and offense that can even stop my Kikaichu. He said almost as a question. Hinata's eyes flared open, Byakugan instantly activating. Suddenly her arms became blurs and the leaves around her began to be shredded to bits faster than the normal eyes could see. Hinata's face contorted into rage as she tried her hardest to keep the jutsu going. Her arms were beginning to slow as sweat dripped from her face. Her two teammates watched in stunned silence as she finally stopped, dropping to her knees. It's still not good enough, she thought, tears entering her eyes. I won't be ready to face Neji without it. Hinata, what was that? Kiba called out in amazement. That is unlike any technique I have seen before. Did you create that? Shino asked. Yes. It's supposed to be a counterattack to swarm techniques, and to the 64 palm jutsu of my clan. She breathed out. I've been working on it for several months now, but I haven't had the time or the skill to finish it. But you just diced those leaves to bits. That's amazing. Kiba shouted. Keep your voice down, Kiba. Hinata said as she moved to a sitting position. Her chest bounced slightly, making Kiba hold his nose in fear of blood. I neglected my training. That technique should have been done by now. Shino frowned and faced away from his teammates. His analysis of the attack showed that she had used very little chakra when she started. From what his bugs told him, she used two extremely thin chakra blades and used her flexibility to move them at extreme speeds in a 360-degree rotation. His bugs were dead scared of the technique, and she did say it was a counterattack to swarming jutsus. The only drawback that he saw was that Hinata hadn't kept it going for very long. Hinata, that was acceptable. The skill level and nature of that attack greatly increase the effectiveness regardless of the time that you can sustain it for. Hinata nodded. That's nice, Shino-kun, but my goal is to be able to move while performing the technique. In that sense, I'm sorely behind. Shino nodded, seeing as how that was a problem. He had no advice to give her, seeing as she was probably the best close-range fighter out of all three. Kiba was a mid-range fighter and of course he was the long-ranged. Hinata was technically their first line of defense. Even with Hinata's training, Shino was worried for the girl. She hadn't completely changed, but she was much different than she was a few days prior. He didn't want her to do anything that she couldn't handle, and her new attitude, though more worthy of being a shinobi, was not going to be able to cater to her emotions as well. She seemed more distant than before, and from the start of the exams, she seemed to rarely smile. Hinata was like a little sister to him, so this truly upset him. Hinata, what is the reason for your sudden change in attitude? Shino asked bluntly. Kiba frowned as they gazed upon Hinata. The Hyuga heiress herself looked down and crossed her legs. It's nothing. Just a few misunderstandings is all. She replied. Misunderstandings with whom? Shino asked. Kiba sighed and laid back down. Naruto. Hinata blushed and rose an eyebrow. How would you know that? She asked. Honestly, I don't think there's anybody in the village who doesn't know you have a crush on him. If you're acting differently so suddenly, it has to have something to do with him. Besides, you and him were the only two left in the academy after the written exam. Kiba called. What happened between you two? Shino asked. This is why we don't let you lead on missions. A young teen with glasses and short black hair called. He sighed and scratched his head as he looked around. Well, excuse me. I didn't expect to get lost from just going forward. A girl just as young, short turquoise hair with a ruby clip called. She had on a red and white tank top and white forearm protectors. She wore white baggy pants that slightly hung off her hips and wore her forehead protector on her arm like Shikamaru. Would both of you shut up? I'm trying to sleep. The third and last member of the team called. He had on a long white shirt with a short blue jean jacket over it. He wore blue jeans and wore his forehead protector around his neck like a collar. When he opened his eyes, the irises were yellow and his pupils were slit-like. Seriously, train. Do you have to do that creepy eye thing right now? The first team called. Shut up, Yuryu. He shot back, his eyes returning to their natural brown. The young girl sighed and fell to her back. Aw man. At this rate, I won't be able to get any ramen today. She called and her stomach grumbled. Both of her comrades' sweat dropped. Fu, you ate 12 bowls before we got here. Mr. Ichiraku was crying tears of joy on how much of our money you spent. Yuryu said, pushing his glasses up. Yeah, he said it was amazing that there was someone else in the village that could eat as much as, what's that kid's name? Naruto. Train finished. He dropped down from the tree he was sitting in and stretched. Fu's stomach growled again. She looked up at her two teammates with fake tears streaming down her cheeks. Feed me. Suddenly, Yuryu paused, turning on spot. Be quiet, someone's coming. He instantly jumped back into some bushes, Fu and Train following swiftly. Seconds later, a team, Naruto's team, dropped into the clearing they had just entered. They watched silently as the short one with blonde hair seemed to get upset and tell his two teammates to go on ahead. What's up with him? Fu whispered, but neither of her teammates responded. She frowned and rose an eyebrow when they didn't answer and turned around. Looking back, she found both of her teammates bound and captured by enemy ninja. In the clearing, Naruto now stood with Neji and the others. Tenten looked around startled, finally registering the many chakra signatures around them. Surrounded? She asked, placing a hand on her weapons pouch. Naruto quickly pulled a kunai and chucked it to his left. Most likely shadow clones, he said as he jumped back as the area where he had thrown his kunai exploded. But that would mean our enemies are well beyond genin level. It has to be Orochi. Help! The voice of a young girl came from somewhere within the forest, stopping Naruto before he could continue his assault. It was enough time for the enemy to show themselves. The grass nin team from earlier dropped down from the tress, revealing that they were indeed clones of each member. Well, this just got a whole lot easier. Tenten said with a small smirk. Foolish girl, you shouldn't underestimate us, unless you want to end up like this team. The nin threw Fu and her team down in front of Naruto and the others. Naruto gazed down at Fu, who seemed to be in pain. He frowned for a second before a smile began to overtake his face. Wow, you guys really did up, he said as he began to take several steps back. Team Guy rose eyebrows at Naruto's demeanor. So you sensed it too, Kit? The fox asked inside of his mind. Naruto mentally nodded, seeing the girl growing angry on the ground. But we can't let her have all the fun. Hey, Lee, I bet I can take out more than you in 5 minutes. Naruto goaded. This instantly got a reaction as the bushy-browed teen's eyes burst into flames. How youthful to make this into sport. I shall accept your challenge, Naruto-kun. And if I cannot defeat more than you, then I shall do 1,000 curls. And if I cannot do 1,000 curls, I will complete the rest of the Chunin exams while carrying Tenten on my back. A second later and a mace had collided with the back of Lee's skull. Like hell you will. Tenten shouted. It seems they are ignoring us. The grass ninja with his eye covered like Kakashi said. The others agreed by chuckling sinisterly. An action they won't live to regret. The leader said through his gas mask. Hey Fu, you okay? Naruto asked the girl as she slowly undid her own bonds. Looking closely, he saw that she had what appeared to be a wasp stinger protruding from her wrist. How do you know my name? She asked startled. Shichibi. He and Kyubi are good acquaintances. He said naturally. Fu ed an eyebrow. So you are a Jinchuriki. I couldn't be sure. Well, what's your name? Before the two could continue their conversation, the army of grass nin clones began to rush in. Naruto and Fu turned, getting back to back. A spark shot through them both, making their eyes widen. That was weird, they thought simultaneously. Naruto could hear the fox laughing inside his head for an unknown reason. He ignored it and prepared for battle. As the first nin came into range of Naruto and Fu, Naruto felt the girl relax her body. She took one step forward, and let loose a barrage of blinding punches and kicks onto the enemy. The clone seemed to be convulsing, not even having time to disperse as the small girl continued her attack. Looking into her scarlet eyes, Naruto saw that she had become emotionless. It was a skill that he wished he had, but because of some of the repercussions, had never tried to achieve it. Locking away your emotions while you're fighting makes it so you won't hold back, but it also tends to get the better of your senses. Going all out against a friend could hold deep consequences, physically and emotionally. With a final spin kick, Fu sent the clone flying and dispersing into a silent puff of smoke. Naruto looked over to Team Guy to see them dispatching of the clones, quickly and efficiently. Lee was tearing through them as if they were paper while Ten made his jaw drop by how beautiful and fluently she handled two kodachis. Neji was swiftly spinning about his opponents, apparently jabbing at their body. Naruto rose an eyebrow as he noticed that it was the same way Hinata fought in the academy, albeit much faster. Looking at all four of the people around him, having fun with their would-be ambushers, Naruto felt a pang of guilt rush over him. He had just decided to get serious while these guys had been serious all along. Even by the way Fu was going about decimating her foes, he knew that she had never played around with her future. Naruto, look out! Fu shouted and dived on top of him just as large snake soared over his head. Naruto looked up with wide eyes as the snake landed behind them, turning to face its prey. The snake was as big as Car and about 30 meters in length. Naruto scowled, both at losing his focus on the battlefield, and at forgetting key factor in the Chunin exams. He faced the Grass Nin team just to see one of their members dashing off in the direction that his own team had been going. That's him, that snake bastard. Naruto groaned inside his head. Naruto. Tenten called. You two take care of that snake while me and the guys finish these clones off. Think.